and welcome again to the It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I'm here today with Judith Rafferty. Judith is a creative copywriter, commercially astute, and she's helping businesses get seen, known, and booked. Her track record is value-rich, income-generating content creation that boosts awareness, engagement, sales, sign-ups, visibility, and I'm hoping we're going to get into a lot of that during today's chat. During the past 10 years, she's significantly evolved copywriting services for one-off jobs and regular retainers. So as a freelancer and agency subcontractor, she's been doing quite a lot of work around there. She's got a real proven ability to actually generate copy that sells, and it's well grounded in well experienced in tight deadlines, optimizing that copy to deliver maximum conversion. So for a real professional talk, I think you're going to love today's talk. Judith, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee.
Good morning. Good to see you, Stuart. How are
And you, Judith, you've got your coffee ready?
I've got my coffee at the ready. Yes, indeed.
Brilliant. So let's leap in with my first of my questions. So what's the biggest challenge you find your ideal client has or faces when you come across them?
I'm going to sort of intermingle three.
Go ahead. I love a bit of intermingling.
It's generally the time, the in-house skills, the inclination, or a mixture of all three to spend that time on content generation and to do it well. Because let's be honest, you're a marketing expert. You've written books on marketing. We all know it can be quite punishing for the small business owner. It's a hamster wheel, and certainly if business owners don't have the inclination towards sitting there writing blogs and things, it can be a real black hole, can't it? A hamster wheel that they really struggle with, and it's such a shame because of course they should be spending their time shining their unique brilliance on the world rather than getting headaches over writing about their own business, which they really didn't set up their businesses to do in the first place.
I often say, Judith, certainly to my clients, that they will very often take the path of what I call the least assistance, partly because they think, well, nobody can possibly know this as good as me. And that may be true, but the fact of the matter is their skills, if they were a skilled copywriter, they'd be a copywriter. They wouldn't be doing the business they're doing. So why not find the person that actually knows how to do it better than you and get them to help you do it?
Yeah. And then, of course, what you find, when they do have that attitude, and they put together copy that isn't engaging, and another huge beef of mine and the copywriting circle in general is they write for themselves and not for their target audience.
So that's really what brings me on to the second question then. So what's the common mistake people make when they are trying to resolve the problem of writing their own copy rather than sort of getting the help they need? And it's around that they're writing what they know rather than what their customer wants to know, I guess.
Yeah. So they're just reeling off, lots of we are, and we set up, and we won this award, and we do this, and we do that, and it's not sort of directly hitting those pain points of the clients. It's just reeling off a load of information that I think we all, the small business owners, have to get our heads around. Yes, of course, it's nice to have a bit of background information, but so much us we nobody really cares. Our mums and dads might, but and think, oh yeah, that website looks great, well done, son. But that's about as good as it gets, really.
It's interesting.
Jargon and inaccessible language. We can all be guilty of thinking, that this sounds a bit smart and clever, and no, it's just not resonating with anybody because you're writing it for yourself and not for the reader.
That's really interesting you put it like that, Judith. And I think there's a couple of things in there that we could unpick for hours, but let's not try and do it for hours. But I mean, the two that really strike me is one of which is the thing that you've just said is they're writing for themselves. And we could talk about the difference between, writing so that you can get your message across to somebody so that they hear it. I often say to people, Communication is actually what the listener does or the reader does. It's not what you do. So you might think you've communicated because you put down what you understand, but unless the reader has understood it, you've communicated nothing. So oftentimes people forget that what they're trying to do is communicate. They forget that what they're trying to do is send a message that somebody else can understand and can actually can act upon. And that's a really crucial point of a web page or whatever you're writing. But the other thing that's really crucial about all of this, of course, is that even if you've managed to get your message across, you have got to sort of you've got to get them motivated to take action upon it. And so often when you read something, unless you're motivated by it, unless you're grasping and getting the emotions, it's just a piece of reading. You're not drawn in, are you?
Yeah, and of course, you know, with what you've just said, you've just led straight into another thing that small businesses can be very guilty of: the clear call to action. You know, text. You know, big chunks of nasty copy all over the place, and not actually what do you want them to? What do you want people to do? Do you want them to pick up the phone? Do you want them to fill in this box with their email details? You know, do you want them to arrange an appointment with you? What do you want from them now that you've given them all this information?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was only talking about this on Thursday, actually, with a client when we were talking about the fact that, you know, the two things that he was trying to get into his copy that he was failing to do, and he was himself doing it. And I kept saying things like, "You sure this is the right way of doing it?" He was doing two things. And you've mentioned there, he included lots and lots of awards. And I went, that's great. That's great social proof that you have managed to achieve something other people might be interested in. But unless they understand what those awards are, they don't actually convince anybody. They're just, you know, well, that's an award. So what? You've got to explain to people that that award is a really prestigious award. So you've got to put that in such a way that people understand it. And the second one, as you said, he failed to put in a call to action. I said, you really got to do 4 things with your call to action, which he'd failed to do. He hadn't summarized his offer. He really hadn't told them and given them multiple ways of actually contacting him. He hadn't given them a compelling reason why they should. And he hadn't explained what was happening next. And I said, unless you explain all of those in your call to action, you know, fill in this box and then we'll come back to you within 24 hours. People would think, oh, okay, well, I don't have to do it now. And he hadn't given them a really compelling reason that sort of said, do this, and then this is what will happen. He hadn't summarized what they were trying to do. And he was failing to sort of get across. And you know, the skill of doing all of that is actually embedded in somebody like you, where you've been doing it for a while and you know exactly how to make that work.
Indeed.
I can't say any more for you, can I?
It's done my job for me.
I'm sorry. Let me move back onto my pedestal and allow you to sort of get on and sort of do that. So yeah, so many times I think people fail to sort of capitalize on what they're good at, which is doing their thing, pleasing their customers, making their products, and leaving you to do the job of helping them to explain to the world what it is that the benefit is about the product or service.
Absolutely, you know, and of course, you know, that's where someone like yourself, of course, you know, comes into your own as a, you know, as a growth expert, you know, which I'm sure you could. I was going to say, I'm sure you could write books. You have about businesses working on their business and in their business, you know, and it's quite the dilemma, isn't it, for the small business owner?
It is. It is. It absolutely is. I tell you what, we'll move on to question 3 before we spend much longer sort of picking apart the wonders of why it is none of us are sort of getting our copy as well, getting it as right as we might. So what's the valuable free action or free resource that you'd like to sort of point the audience towards to get them to sort of understand better how they could get their copywriting moving?
Well, I often get people asking me, we get stuck. We don't know what to write about. You know, when they're thinking about doing blogs for their website, for example, which is such a hard-working little piece of kit in multiple ways. A site a free site, free tool that I would recommend them to is called Answer the Public. And you literally go onto the website, answer the public. If, for example, you worked in a cafe, you can type in coffee as your keyword, and it will literally bring you up 100, 200 of the most commonly asked questions that the public ask about coffee. And there you have it, a great big list that can keep you going for the next couple of years of themes and topics for your social media post writing, or your blog post writing, or your frequently asked questions, or whatever you want to do with it.
So that's Answer the Public.
It's Answer the Public.
Brilliant. I should be making a note of that one and going to it immediately after this talk. Is there anything else?
There's a few. Do you know what? There's a few different good tools like that online. Another one that's quite a nice one is CoSchedule, but that is a headline tool.
Ooh,
so I mean, headlines are a huge one.
It's a huge topic. We could spend hours just on headlines.
Yeah, I could spend a day just talking about headlines, but that will literally rate your headline and tell you, no, that's not a good word, or you're being passive rather than active. So they are both really good ones.
I like those.
People that are having a go at blogging for themselves to.
I like those. I will be looking both of those up, and I shall make a note of them now. I shall be looking at both of those later on today. So, having said that, and I'm sort of milking you for information, I'll let you finish your coffee whilst I ask the next question. So, what's the concept or book that you've come across which has enabled you to sort of get most excited about some of this?
I've got one of each, actually. I'll do
Brilliant.
The book first. This is a wonderful contact of mine on LinkedIn, a gentleman called John Asperian, who is pretty much sort of recognised as one of the world thought leaders. I don't think it would be an understatement to call him in the field of LinkedIn. He's a wonderful gentleman, very helpful. I would seriously recommend everybody who is always looking to up their social media game, connect with him on LinkedIn. There he is, John Asperian. And his book is Content DNA. And to me, it was such an inspiring read for me. It literally is a step-by-step guide, your 101 guide to having an online presence as a small business and business person, establishing your online presence, and then growing it and upping your game as you get more confident. So literally that step by step, what to do, what to steer clear of like the plague, in really sort of readable, actionable chapters.
I shall be contacting him immediately after this, Judith, to see if he's interested in doing another one of these with us.
Oh gosh, I'm sure I know he's he's very high profile, and he'd be an
Brilliant.
Absolutely awesome guest for you to have on.
And is there you mentioned that's the book? You said there was a concept as well. What's the concept?
The concept, which is one of the most simple, most sort of proven copywriting 101 concepts, is as simple as this, and it's features tell, benefits sell.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, I did, it was a concept that, has been familiar to me for a long time. I did a new conversion copywriting course last summer when everything was really in the doldrums of deep lockdown, an American course. And it was something that was just iterated all the way through, which I really enjoyed, going back to those basics, and, it was applying it to your headlines and again, headlines, and, the way that you structure your copy, with the hookiness that you include, in your various subheadings and things.
So to boil it down for the small business owner that's looking at this, the idea is that you actually talk about your benefits to your potential audience, isn't it? The benefits is what they want to hear about. The fact that, as somebody has once put it to me, a hammer can be made of metal, but that's not the point. The hammer puts the nail in the wall, and if you want a nail in the wall, You want to know how well the hammer does that.
Absolutely. So it's like, those, when we actually think, what we've seen in real life, it would be something like, for example, that miracle cream, that has finally harnessed the secret of eternal youth, that you would get smoother, younger looking skin without going under the knife.
It's a Monday morning. That's the excuse so young as I once did. So I'll go look up that cream as well once we finish.
So
Judith,
of course, that's encapsulated perfectly, without even talking about, what the cream is called, and it contains XYZ. It's just sold the dream, the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely right. Brilliant. So tell me, is there a question that I should have asked you which I've failed to ask so far?
Just have a quick refer to my. Yes, there was indeed something which was basically when people are having a go at writing for themselves, whether they're pretty good or whether they're intrepidly taking the first steps, is that one tip that I would give that can really help them sort the wheat out from the chaff, so to speak. And I would say that tip would be: try to read out loud what you have written.
Ooh, great idea.
If you feel silly reading out, just read it out loud in your head, rather than actually sitting here going, oh. And if it feels normal and natural to you, if I would say it sitting here now having this conversation with you, then that's fine. If it's all jargonized and peppered with words that you wouldn't usually use in your everyday conversational voice, that's when no, if it, because it's not sounding natural and conversational, and if it isn't sounding natural and conversational, it's not going to be accessible and engaging for the person that's reading it.
Does this apply as well? And I'm sorry that we're sort of going off a bit, but and that's great for a sales letter, but does that apply on web pages when you've got to worry about the SEO element? I mean, how do you overcome that when it comes to writing a web page where people say you've got to keep repeating the same words because Google likes to see the same word? How do you work that into a conversational style?
Yeah, it can be a bit difficult sometimes. Yes, of course, with SEO and also blog writing is exactly the same. And there's certain points, of course, where you need to, in your headline, in your first sentence or first paragraph, ideally, in your subheading, your first subheading at least, and then peppered throughout the course of the piece of text that you're writing. So yeah, it's just that's a great example of why you're reading out loud. But I've done it many times, when I've been getting a bit stuck, to be honest, for including the SEO keywords or phrases, because of course in those cases you do have to gratify Google as much as you have to gratify the reader. So that's a prime example of when reading out loud, either physically or in your head, makes you stop and no, that one is just too forced. When I've actually read it out loud, that one sounds quite hideous, in fact. So I'm going to have to take that out and find somewhere else to weave it in more naturally.
Do you know, I'm breaking that down because I think that is a great tip, Judith. I'm gonna do a lot more of that. You're right. You feel a bit silly when you're sitting in front of a screen having to read it out loud. But I can remember in the past when I've had to sort of do public speaking and things like that. I've written something down. Unless you practice and read it 2 or 3 times, and it gets to the stage where you think, yeah, that sounds more natural, it can sound so very stilted. So it is a really good idea. Read the stuff you've written down back to yourself and try to sort of imagine saying it or thinking as how you'd have a conversation with somebody. And somehow, if it doesn't quite flow, you've failed to make the point somehow, haven't you?
Yeah.
I like that.
It's the same with the actual language you use to it. I can remember, being an English undergrad, when first coming out into the world of work, and I had this tendency to write these most flourishing, elaborate, sentences. And I can distinctly remember when I first went into copywriting, probably about 12 years or so ago. I worked for this editor. I was still doing it then. And he used to back every piece of work at me. And he used to say, you are frustrating the hell out of me because your English is perfect, your spelling and grammar, but your work is unreadable. Oh. The sentences are too long. And so that's another thing, once it went in there and I clicked what he was talking about, always chop your sentences down to as fewer words as they can possibly be. To 2 words. If I did a blog for a client yesterday, and I had 2-word sentences. Authenticity matters, because we were talking about visions and values and things in this particular piece. So take that long-winded sentence and chop it down into 4, and it's
brilliant.
So natural. And again, if you use a tool like Yoast, they will tell you in no uncertain terms if your unreadability factor is getting a bit too much.
I'd put that down as yet another tool to start looking at, Judith. That is really fantastic. Thank you so much. I think if you haven't got value from this, you really haven't been listening, have you? Let's face it. And that's part of what this is about. So, Judith, do you want to tell us where they can learn more about you? I've got at the bottom there, I've got your LinkedIn profile, where I think people can get more information about you.
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my second home. I'm on there all day, every day. In between doing work, of course, I'm always contactable on LinkedIn. Also on my website, which is www.fruitionventures, that's as in fruit, ION, ventures, all as one word, .co.uk. There is actually a nice little offer on there at the moment, a blog off offer. So buy one, get one free on blogs. So anybody needing any help, just shoot me a line through. And, you're not selling your soul to the devil. Happy to just have an initial little chit chat about where you
brilliant.
are, and more importantly, where you'd like to be.
What a brilliant offer. I shall make sure that we tell the world about your free offer, or your blog off offer.
Off.
I like blog off. I shall write that one down as well. Blog off. Judith, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm just going to very quickly put up the where you can subscribe to see more of where we do this sort of thing. If you'd like to see more of these videos and get notification when they're coming out, subscribe at tca.fyi/subscribe. That's the complete approach for your information /subscribe. And you'll always get notified then of when we're going to be doing these in the future, and also any other interesting guests that we've got coming up. But I know that I'm going to get onto John immediately after this, see if we can get him on this. Judith, thanks ever so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you've had fun, and we'll be speaking again soon. Bye.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.